8:58.
And I'll call the meeting to order.
Let's see, looks like our report is at 8:59, and we are welcome to wait for other folks. We're expecting 2 more. I just
Okay.
haven't open to see who those people were. Tatum, I think Ash are both, yeah, those are both expected. I see Moses has joined us. Thank you, Moses.
Good morning.
Good morning, Moses.
Morning.
I don't believe we're expecting the mayor today. I don't think I got any response from her or Sean.
Do you want me to check in on that, or we'll just go without?
I think we'll go without.
Okay.
I'm not too concerned. Of course, the mayor can jump in.
Caleb, and I don't know if it's just for me or everybody, but your microphone keeps just sort of cutting in and out. Is that the same for you, Sarah?
It is.
And me.
And it sounds,
I'm gonna turn off my camera.
yeah, it sounds muddy. Here's Tatum.
Brenda, I don't know if there's anything important on that screen beside you, but we can see there's a little screen next to you that we can see information being projected
There is?
physically in your space.
I think it's like an Amazon or an Alexa or something. I think I saw that too.
At your elbow.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's turquoise and a
physical
white
elbow,
cream.
Brenda.
Oh, that's my Alexa that plays music.
Okay, I didn't know if there was anything like private that might pop up
No,
on
no,
there,
no.
so I
No,
just
that's
wanted to
just
let you know.
No, thank you. I'm trying to think what screen. Then I had to look at the picture. Yeah, no, I play music during the day, and that's what
Just Housing Authority.
she is, just sitting over there. And she often moves when I talk, so maybe I can adjust her so you can't see her. Because she verbally
Yeah, I don't want all
follows
my
me.
private text messages to you complaining about
You
Sarah.
don't want
Sarah.
that? Okay, well then
I'm
I better
just
move
getting
her,
it
huh?
to
Now you
Ashley
can't see her.
yesterday.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, is Caleb back? Are you there, Caleb?
I'm still here. I just have my camera
Okay,
off.
you just turned your, okay, good. Okay, well, I think we need to go now. I think it's time. Are we good?
Excellent. Do you have the agenda before you, or should I go ahead and present it?
No, I've got it in front of me.
Okay.
Okay, so we've called to order and now we'll do roll call. Vice Chair Moses Malazzo,
Present.
Mayor Becky Daggett is not with us today. Ashley Page,
Present.
Aaron Moore,
Here.
Nadine Hart,
Here.
okay, thank you. Tatum Covey.
Here.
I don't know what city staff is here, so we'll go down the list. Anna?
Here.
Thank you, Anna. Caleb?
Present.
Cherise? Keith?
He won't be joining
Kurt?
us.
He won't be joining us, okay. Kurt?
Kurt's on a well-deserved vacation.
Oh, yay for Kurt. Samantha?
Here.
Sarah?
Here.
Tracy French?
Tracy's in another meeting.
Okay, so roll call is completed. Thank you, everybody. It's now time for public comment, and I'll read the blurb. At this time, any member of the public may address the board on any subject within the board's jurisdiction that is not on this meeting's agenda. The Arizona Open Meeting Law prohibits the board from discussing or taking action on any item that is not listed on the prepared agenda. Commissioners may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the board, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that the matter be placed on a future agenda. To address the board on an item that is not on this agenda, please wait for the chair to call for public comment at the time the item is heard. Did we have anything that was sent in, Caleb?
No members of the public are present and no items were submitted.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. You all have been sent a copy of the minutes from meeting on March 21st, 2024. I would entertain a motion to approve.
This is Erin. I motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I motion
Thank you.
to approve. Meeting.
But we need a second.
I second. Meeting seconds. Can you hear me?
Yes, but who is this, please?
Nadine.
Nadine, thank you. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 I
Okay, all those opposed, the same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. So we actually have no action items at all today, so we'll move on to informational items. We have a presentation on the landlord outreach for housing choice vouchers. That would be Charisse.
I think Sharice has joined us. Tracy has also joined us in the conference room, but I'm going to unmute. See, it's Sharice.
Thank you. Good morning, Charisse.
Good morning. So I don't have a presentation per se for the landlord outreach because we have been talking about the landlord outreach for a couple of years because we haven't done one since right before COVID. And so my coworker and I, we actually sat down and are just brainstorming right now, but I can give you some ideas of what we're thinking about and what our timeline looks like and what we are trying to roll out to be able to get this going again. So we have found that we have a lot of issues with like lease ups, notices, rent increases, and we work with a handful of landlords. And so our plan is to touch base with those that are already on board and kind of give an update to what we're doing, how we're doing it. We have a lot of landlords where their property managers maybe have shifted or they've, the turnover, they're coming and going. And so we kind of want to reel those people back in and say, okay, this is what the program's about. This is how we work. And these are the expectations. When you do receive a housing assistance payment contract, this is what's involved in that. So that's our first goal. And then after that, we are hoping to schedule something within our, we don't have a setting yet, but we've done this before. We've opened it up to the public. We've given a 30-day notice. We said, hey, anyone who's interested of being a housing choice voucher landlord, this is what we're offering. Come have like coffee and cookies or something. So we're working on that right now. So that's all I have for that landlord outreach. So it is underway. And once we have more information, we can fill you guys in on how that's going.
Thank you, Charisse. Are there any questions? I think you're off the hook. Good job. Thank you. Keep us posted. Oh,
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. Nadine has a question.
Okay, so you're reaching out to pre-existing landlords. Do you have the numbers on your pre-existing and are there plans to reach out to some of the bigger players? Some of the property management companies?
So as I mentioned, we are working on that. We have an outline, we have a plan. We just have not set out what exactly that looks like. I can definitely at our next board meeting, I can give you updates on what we've come up with, but our goal is to reach out to all current housing choice voucher landlords initially, and then to reach out to all other Flagstaff property managements, landlords that may be interested in participating in the housing choice voucher program as landlords.
Yeah, that's another question. Also, has there been any talk, okay, because we have a lot of times the Section 8 voucher holders are successful with one-on-one landlords. Unless you get with someone like Housing Solutions, their inventory is down from my last understanding. So that's limited, but what about like the farmer's market? Sometimes people will have booths and you kind of get maybe some of those people that are more active in the community that may have a property besides that, because it seems like when I look, and if you guys had someone to call with set vouchers, you'd see like, I've never heard of this program. Like, how do we get to reach those people? Do we have social media? But a booth would be good at some of these places.
Yeah, great idea. We will definitely jot that down and take that into consideration when we do our planning for rolling out the landlord outreach. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I have a lot of ideas for that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Clarice. If there are no further questions of Clarice, our next presentation is on recertifications, deadlines, and enforcement. And Caleb, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. Is my audio sounding okay?
You're doing better. Mhm.
Okay, clear camera down, hopefully that goes just fine. For those that are in the conference room, I have printed out the presentation. I will be presenting through Teams. I think everyone else is now saying, how does HOTMA streamline CFHA processes title page. Kurt put together this presentation. I did some work on it as well, setting it to a template, a few other items. Please do ask questions throughout, though for those who are present in this room, we'll try to indicate to Brenda to properly follow the order that we have. Do you see a raised hand function in Teams so that we can maintain that as best as we can? This was raised as an item at our last meeting, so there are a few different parts to this conversation, and if Teams will cooperate, there we go. All right, we'll be talking about reporting changes and then a couple example calculations. This is a bit of the nitty gritty. So, and then we'll talk about eligibility screening at the end. After each of these subsections, I have a slide asking for questions for folks before we move on to the next topic. All right, here we go. Oh, that is a little small for me. All right. Clients must report, so currently, our policy that clients must report any income increase of $200 or more per month, or if there's an unemployed household member that becomes employed. Now, this has to do with the obligation for community service for those who are not employed and don't have another exemption. But this also goes into how we calculate the rent. Retroactive rent is charged when a failure to report is discovered. This is a HUD mandate, so we don't have any real decision making in that process, but we just hold it. We see about 5 of these per month between our programs, where somebody has failed to report an income increase that we then need to go catch and do some recovery for. With HOTMA, which the board has already approved last month, clients must report those increases, but there is retroactive rent only on an unreported change that would result in an interim recertification. Now, what does that mean under HOTMA? That means if there's an increase of unearned income that's at least 10% or more of their overall household income, and that's about it. There's one other exception that we did not opt for, and that the board did not approve, but we'll mention that shortly. There'd be very few of these. We don't have a clear estimate because we haven't implemented HOTMA yet, but there'd be very few of these changes. Let's see. Nadine, we have a request, or Brenda, we have a request for question.
Oh, yeah, and I don't see that. Who's that from, Caleb?
That'd be from Nadine.
Yeah.
Okay, Nadine, go ahead.
Can you please spell out what HOTMA stands for?
Oh, gosh.
What is HOTMA?
Housing Opportunities Through Modernization Act.
Okay, housing.
A very descriptive acronym, as we like to use, that doesn't actually tell us a ton.
No.
This has been an ongoing federal revision of how these programs look. It is taking some years to implement. Now is one of those times. Moving on. Okay. No, that did not go. Sorry. All right. Currently, there is optional reporting for a decrease to the income. We always encourage our clients to report if there's been a consistent decrease in that income so the rent can be adjusted, or an increase to deductible expenses. This would be childcare or medical expenses, those type of things that can come up. Incidents of non-reporting presently of these changes average less than once per month. With hot month, all changes must be reported. This is ultimately to simplify the messaging that we have, but that determination is made by the housing services specialist based on policies. I know last month we used the term determination a few times. That determination is explicitly derived from our policy documents. This isn't quite working as smoothly as I hoped, but we're cruising along. All right, change reporting. This was raised last meeting. Currently, we request change reports to be submitted within 10 days of that change. So if someone has started a job on the 1st, they need to report it no later than the 11th. This is an industry standard, so that we are following. The concern has been, are we creating retroactive rent issues when they would otherwise be caught if there is a longer window here? Most of our retroactive rent issues are related to a failure to report, not necessarily a failure to report within that time period. So we're not seeing those reports come in 12, 15, 20 days later. We're just not seeing those reports come in until we do our own research with the EIB. This 10-day reporting supports time and processing of decreases in rent. And under hot mode, most changes will be decreases. So the need to increase rent responsibility basically goes away under most circumstances under hot mode. The other concern is if someone has 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to submit this, then there might be more situations where that just gets passed down the calendar and doesn't actually happen within that time frame. The other concern is if someone gets that change on the 20th, the income change on the 20th of the month, well, if they know that that has to be reported within 10 days and it would be a decrease, well, we can make that as effective. Let's see. Our program is slightly different on when those changes need to be reported so that they're effective the following month. But ideally, we want these changes, if they're decreases, to be effective as quickly as possible so that the rent is appropriately affordable. So yeah, if it's reported on the 20th, we can make that change to the rent for the following month. But if it's not reported until the following month, then they're paying a higher amount of their income towards that rent that won't be fixed until the subsequent month. There's a lot of calendar math in what we do. 30 days allows flexibility to the resident. This is, of course, what we've been discussing last month briefly. Long reporting period may result in the delay or non-reporting. An increase in rent adjustment after the fact. This can be burdensome on our housing services specialists, where we would be doing more adjustments for previous months to play that catch up. How this would play, we occasionally run into this issue now, and verification takes time, but we would see this more frequently if that window is lengthened. I want to pause briefly before going to the next area. Do we have any questions or comments? Nadine is indicating a desire to respond.
I see that. Go ahead, Nadine.
So what kind of software do you have that allows the burden to be lessened? Like I would think, you have 30 days to report, you submit the check stubs and you just kind of plug it in and is it a longer process to do it, or is it just as simply as you've got a program, you just put the information in? Copy of the check stub, that goes in, boom, here's your rent. Is it?
I would love for it to be that simple. The program we use is called Emphasis Elite. Elite is the program that we purchased from the company Emphasis. And this includes several modular programs within it. And this looks slightly different for public housing than it does for Section 8 or for Clark Homes, which now uses the same program, but is not overseen by this board. When we prepare a 50058, the form that we provide to the form that summarizes household income and assets and also their rent responsibility, this is provided both to the clients that we're working with. It's also submitted to HUD through a software platform as well. When we need to go back and do a retro change, that one that has already been submitted, that submission happens at the end of the month. That submission will also need to be revised, which is a process. It's not simply plugging it in because we're changing we're doing a correction on what was previously reported. So there's a few more steps there involved.
How does it take a lot long? What's the time that you have to put into it? It's like a 10-minute thing, or are we talking like 2 hours?
It's going to vary based on the complexity of the change. That's really a case-by-case kind of question.
Okay.
And I'm not going to be able to answer without getting into specifics. Do we have further comment on that? I have for their staff.
I'm just trying to understand.
I think are you good, Nadine?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand.
Teresa, this is Tracy. Can you kind of elaborate on that for us?
I'm not trying to be difficult, but you can see how, like, to me, it's like, well, could you just plug it into like an Excel sheet or something?
No.
And
So no, it doesn't just go into a spreadsheet. What happens is once we get the paperwork, we have to make sure that we have all the documentations needed that was requested to be able to accurately annualize the income. And so if we ask for 2 paycheck stubs, we've got to verify, or whatever type of income that we ask for, we must verify that the income is within the parameters that we need. We then have to do calculations by tape. So mathematical skills are important. So we have to make sure that we are calculating these incomes. We have to average them. We make sure that what we do on tape is then entered into the system. So in the system, we go through, and I know we didn't want to do like step by step, but just real briefly for understanding purposes, we open our system, we go to the person, we create an examination, we put an effective date, we go through, we update the information in the system. We have to make sure it looks right. We look at the final rent, we make sure the rent, if there's an increase or decrease, and then we have to close it out in the system. And then once that closes out in the system, we have to print off a family worksheet, and then we have to do a notice of change, because now we have to notify the landlord or property manager that now this change is going to affect, and that information gets sent off. It gets signed, we get it back, it gets resent to the property manager. So if we sat down and did just one of these, if it was just one person, it's a good half an hour of time and that's just entering in the information. The whole process could take up to 7 days. It could take 2 weeks. It depends on what information we are requesting, the time frame when we need that information, and how are we receiving that information. Did we mail it and we need it back by mail? Did we email it and we need it back by email? So it's a consistent administrative duty to make sure that we are consistently making sure that we're following up. And it's not just one, it could be 20 at one time, or, so there's not a really good average. But if I had to say, like, if we just sat down and did just one and we had all the documentation that we needed for that one change, in a sit down, it would be about a half an hour. But an overall, it could take anywhere, up to 2 weeks, just depending, again, on the types of changes, what documents we're requiring, and what type of change is being applied to the person's household or the family's household.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was good. Tatum has a question or a comment.
Yeah, a comment. Also, that was really helpful. Thanks for explaining it that way. Because I know in my experience in calculating rent, I feel like the 10 days is much more helpful than 30 because I know personally, like 30 days is a long time to remember to report something. And that is just so easy to forget. And I think that it ends up being inherently harmful to residents because especially if you lose income or are lessen in income in any way, then you're paying more rent and then it ends up getting really, really complicated really, really quick. And so I feel like 10 days, while it feels like a quick turnaround, I think is a reasonable amount of time to report income changes because then the housing authority can make changes quicker to impact everyone in a positive way.
Thank you, Tatum. Any further questions of Caleb on this particular slide? I think you're good to go, Tatum, or Caleb, sorry.
Thank you. All right. Looking at interim recertifications, currently, for increases, we must process all changes requiring a report. This average is about 40 to 50 per month. This varies a little bit based on the program because our Section 8 housing choice voucher specialists have a larger caseload because they're not also functioning as a property manager. But we're seeing a lot of these per month. With HOTMA, these increases are only processed if there's an unearned income increase of 10% or more. Now, that unearned income is very unusual, but this would be something like child support or TANF. There's several other programs that would result in some kind of increase, but a 10% increase would likely fall under that. So we're not expecting to see very many of these HOTMA related rent responsibility increases, period.
Caleb, could you tell me what TANF is, please?
Temporary assistance for needy families. This is just one of the programs that can be administered through DES and or the Navajo Nation to provide this short-term assistance, short-term cash assistance.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't see any questions. Go ahead.
With HOTMAS, the Housing Authority may process increases to earned income if there's been a 10% increase to adjusted income following an interim recertification to reduce earned income. You all did not pass this. This was an option that we had, and this is something that we did not recommend after staff consultation. This ultimately means fewer changes, and it's really specific in a way that is it would be challenging to communicate to clients. It's challenging to communicate today. It's challenging to track for our specialists. So we ultimately did not opt for this. It was a may, not a must. Currently, with verification, there's a prescribed hierarchy that must be followed. We use one of at least 2 current consecutive pay stubs or a source statement giving info determining income. This typically means we look for those pay stubs or we get a letter of employment. And then with HOTMA, either pay stubs, EIB, safe harbor, or a source statement are satisfactory. We have a preference on that list, so we would work through that list and it's orderly, but any of these would be satisfactory. This is a little bit of a longer presentation, so I'm going to cruise along, but please do interrupt me if there are questions or comments. I do have the chat open if anyone does comment. Continue with verification. Income verification, we're looking at 60 days using pay stubs or that letter of employment. This also results in fluctuations throughout the year. So we can get, even if someone stays at the same job, that client might have recertifications throughout the year based on seasonal work. We'll have some examples of this shortly. This can also result in possible retroactive rent where someone goes from 20 hours to 30 hours because it's a busy season. And just like you might do during busy season, you forget some of the other obligations such as reporting. With HOTMA, we would prefer to annualize that income. Rent then remains the same, but should be affordable throughout the year. This results in many fewer interim recertifications with very little retroactive rent. Though, of course, the household can report long-term decreases in income, earned or unearned. So instead of saying I've gone from 30 hours to 25 hours, we say, thank you, we've already annualized your income. But if they say I've been laid off, we're going to take that into account and do a recertification. Flexibilities. Got a couple slides on this. HOTMA is ultimately allowing us a lot more flexibility than how we've handled things so far. Currently, we use the same method. We typically use the same methods to verify and calculate income, assets, and deductions. HOTMA, we're looking at more accurate calculations overall over the course of a year, with fewer changes during that same year. We can use safe harbor. This determines annual income for households where income is stable throughout the year and does not require the client to provide paperwork. Ideally, oftentimes this will allow us to use EIB and tax returns to determine household income. This eliminates the seasonal interim recertifications for that income and minimizes the documentation load for our clients. As we know, a lot of the folks that we work with are working in service industries or working in seasonal work, could be also school related. So that does minimize that need to make those changes. Also with HOTMA, check stubs for source of income statements, they're needed for substantial long-term changes. They may be needed for income decrease to establish accurate and affordable rents. So we typically are more concerned about a long-term decrease in rent that is a variation from the previous calendar year. So taking long-term medical leave or something like that could be part of that. Pausing for questions. I know this loaded a lot of stuff. Right.
It was a good presentation.
Oh, that was part one.
Well, it was still good.
Thank you. All right. We're talking about verification calculations now. I think if you've known Kurt for a little while, he really values the specificity of what we do. He really cares about providing examples. This goes into some detail, and as a result, the slides are wordier than rather wordy. Given time constraints, I'm also comfortable skipping ahead. We are feeling a better sense of this. Let's take an example for annual recertification. We have the details of a resident on the slide. This is also presented for you. This is slide 16. It's just breaking down those details for a household. 2 people are working. There's a minimum wage increase. The household pays for childcare. The household has a checking account and a savings account, as well as a whole life insurance policy. What does that mean for us? Currently, the left side lists all the things that we would request for that household for recertification. We need pay stubs for both those jobs. We need 60 days of childcare statements. We need 6 months of checking account statements, the most recent savings account statement, as well as information about the whole life insurance policy. We have somebody joining us who I believe is a member of the public. We have already passed this window, but you're welcome to attend. This would be, I'm seeing Chris Spelke on the chat. All right. All right. So we need a lot of items from our clients to calculate their income. With HOTMA, for the reasons we've discussed in the first part of the presentation, this documentation burden is reduced. Because the household is expecting stable income, we have safe harbor to help us calculate that income and hence their rent responsibility. We know that that household is at minimum wage, so we know we can estimate what their income is going to be based on the minimum wage increase in our community. We would still need those receipt proof of childcare expenses. And we would need a self-certification. This is simply a form that the household adults would sign saying that their total assets are less than $50,000. This removes the need for this bank statements as well as that whole life insurance, as long as that total surrender value or accessible value is under $50,000. So at the client and recertification, household has one adult who works in the service industry. So they would typically have these multiple recertifications through the year. One adult who works 20 hours a week with Sodexo during the school year. Now that's only a 40-week per year kind of work, so we annualize that income as well. One child receives social
Supplemental.
Supplemental, thank you. SSI. The household has a checking account, the household has a savings account, and the head of household has a 401k with their job. So we have a new example here. Currently, we're looking for those pay stubs. We're looking for the SSIs verified to the EIB, 6 months of checking account statements, savings account statement, and that 401k or proof that it is unavailable. What we're concerned with, both present and going into the future, is what money is accessible to the family, and that's what we need to know about the 401k. Some of our 401ks have are not surrenderable, so they don't have any access to that right now. With HOTMA, that income is seasonal. Therefore, EIB could be used to determine the annual income. Resident has no other changes. So as a result, the IRA would only be needed for long-term changes, such as full loss of employment for this household. Resident would complete certification on assets and values that are under $50,000. So we're seeing a reduction overall in documentation responsibility, the documentation burden. Having done a few recertifications when I was covering over at Brandon, especially these whole life insurance policies, these preparations, they're a challenge to get a hold of as well. So there's some easier things, there's some challenging things. Here's another example. The residence information is one adult works at a job that they started 3 months ago. Child support is awarded. They have a checking account, they have a savings account, and the head of house has a cash card where the child support is deposited. We can see we're seeing very similar. What can we get? What do we need right now from our clients? Whereas on the right side, we can use the 4 most recent pay stubs, and we send out a CSEA printout. That's on the specialist responsibility, and then that self-certification once again. Those are our examples, and we have some calculations. Now, any questions? How are we feeling about these nuts and bolts questions?
Looks like we're good.
Excellent. All right, so this is going to be a bit of a deep dive. We have resident information if there's one adult who works at a DoubleTree. So that's seasonal changes at a hotel as hours fluctuate. And then one adult works at Sodexo with approximately 40 hours, 40 work weeks per year. Now, I'm not going to run through each of these calculations that we have in front of us, but you can get a sense that we are doing the best guess technology in terms of what we should expect for income for the household on the left. Or on the right side with HOTMA, we're able to use the previous year's income to make a good estimate on what that annual income is going to be. Similarly, with Sodexo, the employee that's working with Sodexo, we can do that pay stub number crunching. In this situation, the client is paid weekly, so we need 6 pay stubs. Or we can use that EIB to take an annualized income. Number crunching comparison. This is the kind of math, and this is what Sharice was speaking of as well, is that when we're talking about our clients, each household is different. And so this is just one example of what this can look like. And this is the kind of calculation work that our specialists are doing all the time. Currently, we're tabulating in the total annual income for this household, less deductions based on the dependents. We get our adjusted annual income, which we then divide by 12, and then we take 30% of that for total tenant payment. There's some slight variation in this for Section 8 because we also incorporate what is what they're responsible for utilities, and some other factors. But this is a ballpark estimate for us. With HOTMA, we're taking those annualized income from the previous year. I think for both. We're using that EIB for both of these. And we've done less of the deductions, same kind of math at the end. We look at the annual, divide by 12, and again, we look at 30%. In this situation, the household has slightly higher responsibility because that's what the average looked at. The next example is actually going to be slightly lower rent responsibility. It's going to come down to the specifics of the household and what that looks like. Nadine is indicating a question.
Okay,
Go ahead, Nadine.
so I'm confused. So on the left side, the tenant owes $570. On the right side, it's more. And well, I could say like, well, it's not that much more. That's like gas, that's groceries, that's saving up to get your teeth fixed or something like that. That's it. I mean, it may not seem like much, but when you're living and you need to get groceries and stuff, I mean, people are eating potatoes and beans right now. So which one it sounds like 570 is beneficial to the voucher holder if this is a Section 8 voucher. And if they pay more, they don't get that back. I don't understand, like, why is HOTMA better in this case?
So what, in this situation, what we're seeing is the burden for the household with HOTMA is they're not reporting all the time when we go get a rent increase. So we're minimizing, we're nearly eliminating any chance for a retro rent in that. But yeah, in this circumstance, based on the numbers we have, that value is higher. Where are some other benefits for the client in the HOTMA? That's not saying our HOTMA was designed around. I'm not saying that that's the case, but one of the other benefits is if any of these employees receives a raise, that's just going to be caught at the annual recertification. Their household's going to benefit from that raise instead of having to do a report increase because that's earned income. And under HOTMA, we will not do recertifications for earned income increases, typically jobs.
So on this side right here, they're annualizing it based on the EIP. This one is where they would come in all the time, report changes, and weekly. They would benefit from this side because you don't have to do all that and remember and set yourself up for retro rent.
Yeah, but if you need the money, like for a birthday or something, you'd be better off just reporting as you go, right?
And we'll see with the next example that the calculations end up having a slightly lower rent responsibility for the client. That's just, we're going to have situations where it's going to be slightly higher or slightly lower than compared to the previous calculations. But the other benefits that are there is that when there is an earned income increase, that isn't caught until the following annual recertification.
A comment.
Tracy has a comment, Brenda?
To this, in all fairness, when I did used to do Section 8, a lot of people would always ask, why can't you just annualize it instead of me coming in all the time? That was the common question a lot of families would ask. It would rather see it this way. And that's probably why they're doing it now.
And it would depend on your job.
Yes.
So if you're like me and I only get paid per opportunity, it would not help me if I have 2 months of working for FUSD as an auxiliary teacher, and then all of a sudden there's nothing. So I can go from $1,000 very easily to 200. I've seen my paychecks reflect that with holidays and whatnot. So what I'm saying is, like, I'm not the only one. This would not help me to keep going in at a higher amount because I may or may not make that. Summer comes up and then I don't get any money back if I paid more into it. But I don't have the, you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I'm
not trying to make this about me. It's not about me. I see on one hand, yes, that was so much easier.
So let me respond to that. Let's say, I mean, this is why we have these examples, is to try and flesh out certain realistic situations where we try to do our best to annualize your income. We have registered source of income, so we can use that EIB. And if you were to work more than that in the following year, then that's money that you can set aside and use as you wish, because your rent responsibility will not change because you're working more or you're getting paid more as a result of using that previous annualized income, because it's earned income. Now, let's say there is a long-term decrease that you report. Maybe you just return to school, or there's a situation where the classes that you in particular offer are not available. You report that this is a long-term decrease, and then we would correct your rent at that time. Yeah.
Is the hot a must?
In this situation, yeah, at this point, we're talking about the result of this household's income responsibility or rent responsibility being calculated under HAMA. Yes. And last month we had the vote for the HAMA with a briefer discussion. It was very clear that we had a bigger conversation, which has led to this presentation and our presentations today. Don't see any other comments. We'll go ahead and keep going.
Go ahead, Kayla.
See. All right, so let's, as an example, for the same household, let's say that they have a subsequent raise with DoubleTree employment. Currently they supply 4 consecutive pay stubs showing new income. We calculated new annual income for DoubleTree. Under HAMA, they reported there's no action because this is earned income. So we would not calculate it again until the following annual recertification. Oh, I think I'm going to duplicate the next slide. So here we see those changes. The changes are underlined on the left. We see the DoubleTree income has changed. As a result, the adjusted annual income has changed, the adjusted monthly, and the total tenant payment responsibility. On the right, under HAMA, there's no change. There's no change to that rent responsibility. They continue to be responsible for 653, and that's total tenant payment. Let's say we have a subsequent decrease to that DoubleTree employment. The household supplies those 4 consecutive pay stubs. We do calculations, and with under HAMA we do like calculate. We check again, and again on the left we see these changes. We have different DoubleTree income. We have different adjusted annual and tenant responsibility. Under HAMA, this is the change that is less than the 10% for that household compared to the annualized income. So that rent does not change at this point because we're looking at the annual rent burden when we do this when we do the recertifications for HAMA. Let's say another subsequent increase for DoubleTree. Again, this is somebody who's working seasonally. So this is a commonplace kind of situation where they're having peaks and valleys in their overall income. And we see the same kind of situation where we see these adjustments. On the right, there's still consistency. So while it can seem higher immediately, the overall average will often be less and the responsibility for both the client and the specialist is reduced overall. And this is a side-by-side comparison for that current. This is slide 33, where we have 4 different windows where that household is paying rent. On the left, a different amount, resulting in an average of $7,791, compared to with Hotma, that average throughout $7,846. I thought I had a second example on this one. I think I've looked at this so long, I got a little confused on that. But this is that kind of longer term picture that we're looking at with Hotma, and using this sample as an example. Nadine has a question. If Brenda could call.
Go ahead, Nadine. And it looks like Moses is typing a question as well. Nadine, you may go first.
So I totally understand how Hotma could streamline things, but I'm looking at this, they pay $7,846 versus $7,791. When you're making these fluctuations month to month, there's an assumption with Hotma that you are saving money for those lean months where you have to pay more. But is it leaving, it kind of almost doesn't leave room for the other stuff that people are responsible for, like a car repair bill, where it's like, okay, I pay less this month. Okay, I can get my transmission fixed, but then my rent burden is high. Whereas you can just kind of go as you have your income, you know? It seems like an accident's happening with Hotma. You have to hope you have the money for your rent. You see what I'm saying? It would make sense for a job where like you're a nurse, or you're typically working the same amount. Like when I worked for the city, I only got paid so much per week. It didn't matter if I stayed longer or shorter. That was my contract. So Hotma would have been great. And I got bit because I didn't have like a Hotma thing. But now, as an independent sort of contractor, like other people, I don't know. It seems like you could really end up not being able to afford your rent.
I will say with the annualized income calculation, there is an expectation and there is a responsibility for the specialist to communicate. This is how we're calculating the rent, or rent responsibility. And there will be months because we annualize this to plan for, to save. I will say that with the school calendar work, we typically try to annualize already, and that conversation is part of that process too. So this expands that particular responsibility, but it's not a new responsibility to us or to some of our clients who are basing their home budgets around school calendars or seasonality. But yeah, there are households that are gonna, households that are going to have an easier time, and there are going to households that have a time where that needs to be trained in frequently. But again, when there are these long-term increases for households, there's no chance for a retro rent because they forgot to report that increase in rent. So it's calculating it together instead of catching up with it later, which is essentially what that retro rent responsibility is. And it's a different way to do this. It's the way our new policies are going to be implemented. And we're talking with our leads who are on the call now. Our current and our leads are going to be working together to talk about the implementation of these steps. And there are going to be some valuable benefits that this example did not go into in terms of those income increases, transferring to a job that pays more or taking on those additional hours long term.
Didn't that catch up with you though the following year?
Your rent would be adjusted the following year, but it wouldn't have retro rent. It would not be it would not be looking at this last 6 months.
My standpoint, it kind of sounds like it's like, well, I'm having a good year, but next year there's assumption I will continue to have a good year financially. And then there's also you're responsible for saving up for when the months are lean. how's the housing authority not gonna look at your checking account saying, whoa, you have all this money in here, we're gonna increase your rent?
Well,
You know, and it's like, well, I'm saving for the lean times.
well, we don't look at checking accounts to determine how much is there unless it's of a value that we have to calculate for passbook. Let me go ahead and finish. So that's not what we're looking at that checking account for. We're also looking to see if there's other sources. Under HOTMA, we don't necessarily need to do that. We can take that self-certification and say my assets are under $15,000. So how those are going to be implemented in different programs is going to vary a little bit, but we have this option now for the self-certification saying, I don't have a huge chunk of money that I'm saving up. We say, thank you, have a good day. And even if you do have that amount over $50,000, we're just calculating the passbook interest on that.
Thank you, Caleb. Nadine, thank you as well. Moses, you had a question?
Yeah, some of it was answered by the answers to Nadine's questions. A lot of this looks to me like it's hard for me to tell how easy it will be for residents to plan ahead. I mean, I know looking at the current system, it can be even more difficult maybe, or it can be difficult to plan ahead, you know, from the first 3 months to the second quarter. You know, that's a massive change. And so that concerns me, but I agree that the long-term cost also concerns me. So I don't know what the solution is. I just want to say I am concerned. I don't know if there is an actual solution to it, but I mean, I know that if my rent changed by more than $300 from 1 month to the next for a quarter, that would be a pretty terrifying thing to have to adjust to. Even if I'm receiving more pay, I think that a big change like that would be pretty make me have to scramble. But at the same time, you know, the $80 or whatever it is more per year is not necessarily easy to accommodate either. So I guess I don't have any good questions, just a statement. So I'll stop.
Thank you, Moses. I have a question. Do we offer budgeting classes, Caleb?
Yes. We have started a new, so before COVID, before lockdown related to that, there were a couple different opportunities in our community for financial literacy training. Those kind of dried up. Actually, next Wednesday, this classroom I'm in will be hosting a new financial literacy course that we're offering with housing solutions. It's going to be specifically geared that we work with in terms of a lower budget or lower household income. This is a strategy we've used to refer people to when they've been consistently living on their payment and their responsibility units for public housing in smart homes. But it's also something we're looking to be open to the public. We just need to turn that initial demand internally before we say anyone can come. Right now, we're looking like we're trying to fill this conference room. Trying to support that as well.
Thank you, Caleb. Moses, you have a question?
I do. I think I kind of figured out what my question is. And looking at this example that's being displayed right now, it's a $55 a year increase with HOTMA versus the current. And what I'm curious about is, do you have any idea, Caleb and team, what the sort of maximum difference would be with HOTMA for our current set of clients? Like, is it going to be per year no more than $75 increase, or is it going to be $300 increase? Do you have any idea what those changes might be? I know that this is all dependent on salaries and changes in pay and stuff like that, but I'm just curious if you have any idea what that HOTMA adjustment might be.
This is a detailed hypothetical. I think we could pull out an example. This would be, we wouldn't want to use a particular file because that would be a breach of confidentiality. But this is a detailed hypothetical that helps us understand that. I think the response that we have is that if there is a long-term decrease in income, then the household's rent responsibility will be decreased as an interim recertification. So that $653 per month on the right side, we would reduce it at that time. It'd be effective the following month for a rent reduction or rent responsibility reduction. I think Sharice looks like it has additional
Yes,
comments.
Sharice, go ahead.
I think I wanted to point out that even though HOTMA is coming out and these are things that we may or must do, I feel like we need to understand that, again, reiterating what Kurt mentioned at the last meeting, that this may not work for every household. And there is not a cap on how much the rent can go up, and there's not a cap on how much the rent can go down. So it's really going to be dependent, like in Nadine's case, if, for instance, her income were to change drastically every month or every 2 months, HOTMA may not be the best option for her. However, if we have another household that they work for, I don't know, the city, and you know you're going to, whatever your income is every month, but you get that raise, you know, you get that 3% raise or whatever, and it's before your annual recertification, you're not having to report that income. And then you get to actually stabilize and then prepare. So I think what we don't understand, or I feel like what we need to understand too, is that we all have to learn how to budget. And, you know, hopefully those budgeting classes that are coming online will help. And housing trade voucher program participants are not immune to that. And so to be able to learn how to manage like everyone else does, I feel is important. And it is a little harder because it's an income-based program. And so it's harder to know, like, how much am I supposed to have? I feel like and these are my feelings, so I'm not like speaking case significant, but if there are ways for us to be able to help families, you know, if their income increases or decreases, that's what we want to do. And I hope that there's an understanding that with HOTMA coming on, this is just something that they're saying, we think this will work better with the families. And, you know, we may not all agree that it may not work for everyone. But again, like Tracy mentioned earlier, sometimes there are families that work for FUSD that are like, hey, guess what? We know you only get paid 22.5 weeks per year, but we're going to annualize your income. So during the summer, your rent is it's not going to change. And so you have to, they then are responsible to make sure that they're managing their monies in a way that they can afford those rents during the summer. Yeah. And so again, it's really case by case, and it's hard to, I think, dive into each number because again, our families are so diverse and so different. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what these numbers are going to look like moving forward.
Thank you, Sharice.
Nadine, interesting comment. I would like you back immediately after Sharice if possible.
I'm sorry, Caleb, you were cutting out. Can you repeat that?
Can I piggyback off of Sharice?
Yes, go right ahead.
So I want to draw attention back to slide 16. So this is an example where it is listed, we are doing our annual recertification knowing that the minimum wage is going up when the recertification is effective. So this might be a recertification in November. And we're going to do this at least 30 days out. In this situation, we calculate in that increase. But if we have a recertification, if we're completing the recertification, not at that juncture where we know the recertification is going to be effective after a raise, then that raise is taught at the following recertification. So that increase would have to handle slightly differently in those circumstances because it's an earned income increase. I just want to share a little bit. Brenda, Nadine's another question.
Nadine, I see Nadine has a question.
Sorry, I have a lot of questions. Okay, so when we talk about like budgeting and things like that, they need to learn how to budget better. How do we as residents budget with an increase potentially under HOTMA and increases to utilities? The utility allowances I mean, you have to work with what the government allows you, but it's kind of low. Considering, water could go up if you're paying for water and things like that. So it's almost like your net income, you're paying more in rent, you're also paying more in utilities. And you may, because of that increase in rent, I've talked to various people in Clark Homes and elsewhere in our community, and they're like, yeah, the minimum wage just bumped me out of assistance. So I'm paying out of pocket. And what I'm saying is like, so now you're trying to budget just for utilities and you have to have your lights on. And now you're budgeting for food and you're trying to save for an increase potentially in rent, but now you need to get a tire for your car. I'm wondering how, like, even going to the best budgeting class you ask will help you get blood out of a rock.
Brenda, I see that chat unit here, the microphone is cutting out a bit.
Yeah. Yes, it's been difficult to hear both you and Nadine.
Nadine is highlighting that the budgeting responsibility and the training of that is limited when the household income is so limited itself. Was that able to be clear? It's clear enough?
Yes, that's good. I got that.
And then the additional question is utility allowances and the utility costs changing. Our utility allowances are adjusted annually as needed, related to these programs. But that's one of the other ways in which we try to adjust the rent responsibility to fit the household, and we're following federal guidelines for that. And as Sheree highlighted and Kurt highlighted last month, there's going to be challenges for some households, and there's going to be benefits for others, and there's going to be challenges and benefits for some of the same households.
Thank you.
I think Tracy.
Yeah, and just as a reminder on the utility allowance, it's not dollar for dollar on what a household does pay. It's based on an average within a study that is done every year.
Thank you.
On how we get those numbers. So it's not dollar for dollar on what people are actually paying for their utilities.
So that you average that in Flagstaff with it's $234 for all water, electricity, and gas per month.
So Tracy, do you want to speak to?
Because it's based on the percentage that Kurt and Deborah in the past have done this, but Kurt mainly in the past 2 years had updated utility allowances, and it's based on the percentage with the Flagstaff. Water, sewer trust, obviously the same thing, but electricity, gas, it's based on
it seems low, and it was my understanding that the city is considering increasing some of the water rates, which could affect voucher holders for hooking up when you move and things like that. I didn't attend that meeting, but it just seems like even if you keep and talking to people, even keeping their thermostats low, it seems to be very high. Even from Clark Homes, which is managed by the Housing Authority, talk to people in Brennan, and it's like that people are cold and with the rent, I'm just wondering how that might help offset what HOTMA throws at a tenant in the future if maybe there's a higher allowance for that utilities. Is that something that can be revisited? Besides,
go ahead, Caleb.
Oh, I think Sarah has comment.
Yeah, Sarah does have a comment, but did you want to answer? Did someone want to answer Nadine's question?
Sarah, were you prepared to answer that, or should I respond?
Go ahead.
See.
Or I can take a stab. I mean, utility rates we look at annually, and so they will be adjusted as rates go up. Utility allowances will be adjusted on an annual basis.
Thank you, Sarah. And you had a question?
Sorry, this is Tracy. The utility allowance too are based on type of unit too. Like you have the type of dwelling unit, which is your apartment, condo, townhome, single family, which is your house, and then the other one is mobile, right, Sharice? I'm sorry, you should know this. So
Yes, mobile.
3 years, sorry.
Yeah, manufacturable. Yeah.
Okay, mobile. So there's 3 different types of utility allowance worksheets we have here. That's what it's based on as well.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a favor. Those people that are all together in the room are talking over each other, and we also cannot tell necessarily who's talking. So if your icon does not appear on our screen, please identify yourself when you're speaking. That's just for clarification to the rest of the members. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. I think we'll also talk to IT and see about a better connection for this particular room. Sarah, did you have additional comment?
I do, thank you. I'd like us to move through this. I think the summary is that HOTMA is an adjustment. We're not saying what we work under with federal regulations is a perfect tool by any means, but it is designed to apply to all. And so the numbers are going to be as individual as our more than 522 voucher clients are. And this is no different than previous, where sometimes things go up and sometimes things go down. Nadine, I hear your concerns about the ability to save, et cetera. But this being an income-based program, we do the best that we can with the subsidies that we have in order to assist people to have an affordable housing expense built into their budget. So I think there's understanding in the details. There's also a road we could go down 522 different times for every client to determine what works, what doesn't, which is best. And what we're seeing is an industry standard being pushed out with HOTMA, where we're trying the tools. If we see that they're not working, or we're seeing that they're detrimental to clients in any way, we'll come back and have the opportunity to adapt those.
Thank you, Sarah. I would like to move on as well. We're running long.
Thank you.
Is everybody good with moving along? The next presentation is on repayment agreements, and that would be Anna and Charisse.
Oh, I have a final section.
Oh, I'm sorry, Caleb.
So we'll talk about the screening process. Given our question or active conversation, I'd like to go through this section, and then we can post questions at the end. Thank you. All right. So these are items that came up in conversation last meeting. So we have criminal and credit screening. Our screening is aimed to ensure a safe and suitable environment for our residents and help us indicate lease compliance for that household. Safety compliance is not something that we can guarantee, but it is something that we try to screen for. This is never done to house those which may be considered more suitable ahead of others who applied earlier. That would be a violation of federal law. Only those currently engaged in activity that would show a very low probability of success are denied. And consider any relevant treatment. We also consider any relevant treatment programs. So, for example, we look at the last 3 years and say last year someone had a drunk driving incident. Well, that's a major problem. But if they are then able to show either completion or ongoing work with a treatment program, that is something that we could consider. This could also extend to violence and anger management or other substance abuse issues. On the screening process. Now this does not apply to our veteran assistance supportive housing or VASH programs, emergency housing vouchers, so we are not issuing new ones of those either, our foster youth independence or our stability vouchers. This does apply to everything else. Applicants provide a local record check with the Flagstaff PD. I'm not sure the right one. Yeah. This is then reviewed for illegal drug use, violent or destructive behavior, and behavior which interferes with the rights of others to peacefully enjoy the premises. Additional reports are gained to determine evidence where needed. We can follow through our police contacts and I'll find more details if we have questions. This only applies to public housing and Clark homes, but applicants provide a 3-year residential history that is reviewed for negative rental experience. We also have landlord references, but I'd like to add that neither a lack of rental history nor a non-response from landlords are any grounds for denial. We are looking for negative responses, not non-responses. And that's because those programs are related to being a landlord for those clients. We have additional screening for all of our programs, or for our states. We like the states returning to our website we're checking for disqualifying evictions or convictions, as well as looking at the National Sex Offender Registry to look for any of those who are under a lifetime registration ban. We do a credit check using online information systems for negative landlord or utility information. We're looking at only the last 3 years. This is regarded as a common preference, and it's not vindictive, whereas some landlords are looking at longer histories, 7 and 10 lifetime histories, and those can be read as vindictive or discriminatory. We're also looking if the household has lived in a different state in the last 3 years. We'll do a broader criminal check, which can be run through the online information center. This is built into the software we use. So there's a fee associated with that. The applicant is informed. So if we do have a situation, if someone is flagged during the screening process, that applicant is informed and evidence of what we discovered is provided. The applicant does have an appointment to dispute and or present mitigating evidence regarding that determination or what has been claimed. This can include if it completed or are continuing to work on substance abuse, anger management, or other relevant treatment programs, as well as if there's a proof of a period related to being a victim of domestic violence. It is not uncommon for perpetrators of domestic violence to use these kinds of systems to try and control their victims. So this is something that would relieve that issue. As well as we look for proof circumstances were beyond the applicant's control. Most recently, we have seen this in regard to failure to pay rent relating to loss of job as a result of COVID shutdowns, for example. There are plenty of other examples, but that's the one that I've encountered personally. Or rather encountered in my screening work. Our last slide for the screening process is the specialist renders a decision. If there is a denial, the applicant may grieve that decision. That grievance process looks a little different for the different programs, but they can grieve that decision for a hearing. This allows for an opportunity to discuss negative behaviors. It improves the relationship between the client and the housing authority if they are housed, so it helps build that relationship with the housing services specialist. And this is a housing service specialist led process as well. So they're starting that work with those who are in the field. And then this is also all consistent with HUD's disparate impact guidance. That is what I have for the screening, and that is the last section of this. I know time is a little bit limited. Nadine is indicating a question.
Go ahead, Nadine.
Okay, so on slide 40, you talk about the sex offender website. Obviously, somebody is not going to qualify to sign the lease. What are you doing to keep like Seiler, Brennan, and Clark home safe? Let's say a woman has somebody that's staying there, not on the lease, but kind of living there. How are you making sure that those long-term visitors who are not on the lease are not on this list? Is it a maintenance guy saying, dude, I noticed this guy's been there? Is it a neighbor saying, I think this guy is living there? How are you guys making sure that it's safe for all the other tenants?
So maintenance is not responsible for lease violations, but what you're describing is a lease violation. A long-term guest in the house needs to be notified. There's a limit on how long guests can stay in the units. And that would be that situation. If there is a police interaction, if there is a something else that notifies us that person is present, we can do a lease reminder. If this behavior persists, then we can proceed with a lease termination. Kurt will be the first to tell you that is a major challenge to argue that somebody is staying in a house that is not on the lease, because they can walk out that door anytime. But that is how that procedure works, and we're relying on our partners with the police department and others to respond to those needs when we become aware of them with substance, with evidence. This can also happen through neighbor reports and things like that of complaints and interactions.
Do you follow
Thank
up on
you.
those?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Nadine. Any additional questions? As always, Kurt's report is very thorough.
Thank you so much for your time and patience, and I appreciate the questions. I will see my item. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the repayment agreements with Anna and Sharice.
Chair, may I ask a quick question?
Sure, go right ahead.
That was a lot of information. We can postpone if brains are fried and we have 11 minutes left. I suggest that repayment agreements be postponed to the next meeting so that we're not overfilling your brains or trying to jam through a presentation without time for understanding or questions.
I think that's a great idea. Are we okay with that, girls?
I was so ready.
I love that idea.
This
Okay.
is Anna. I'm flexible either way, how you choose to move forward.
Thank you, Anna. Okay,
Noted.
we'll got it, Caleb. Okay, great. Then we'll move down to your report, Sarah.
I will keep it short and sweet, and sharing some good news. We have had a housing navigator for 4 years now, going into the 4th year, and it's a position we've sorely needed. The focus has been on implementing the EHV vouchers that came with the pandemic, that require us to assist folks within the EHV program itself with identifying and maintaining housing. And EHV is targeted to individuals experiencing homelessness, fleeing domestic violence or human trafficking. And there's one more, or at risk of homelessness. And so we created that position then. It's only been approved with one-time funding year after year. And this year in the recommended budget going to City Council at budget retreat next week is that position is recommended as a permanent position. And so we are incredibly excited and grateful for that, because the navigator's been key in helping some of our more challenging clients, especially those suffering with mental illness or substance abuse or co-occurring disorders, in identifying and maintaining housing. The other news that goes along with that is our first navigator has left for other opportunities, and our new navigator started on Monday. His name is Richard Perry, and we're excited to be onboarding him, and excited for the skills that he's going to bring to the team as well. The other news with that is that we are sharing that position. The funding is split, so 75% Housing Authority and 25% general fund money, which gives us the ability for that position to work between programs without having to account for every penny, as long as we keep it under that 25%. So that flexibility is really key, especially as we have found occasions where we're able to help other departments with the navigator as well. So that's exciting. I want to brag on our voucher team a little bit. As far as utilization of vouchers goes, it's been, we've been granted new vouchers, and we keep telling, well, we got 5 more of these and 10 more of these. We are at nearly full utilization for all of our vouchers, either with lease up or with households currently searching. And that is only through diligent work of our voucher team in order to make that a reality. We also have the opportunity, I got this email yesterday, to seek additional administrative funding for VASH vouchers, which I believe that we will do, which will help cover some of those gaps, working with some of our more challenging VASH clients as well. And I'll keep it, I'll end there. So
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions of Sarah while she's there? Looks like we're good.
thank you.
You're welcome. I have a request. I think we have done this previously while I've been on this group, but I would like a list of acronyms. If we
Absolutely.
could do that, that would be very helpful. I think to me and probably to other people as well, just to have in front of us when we have these conversations. Thank you. I hope that's not too much trouble.
It's not, it already exists.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, are there any further board member comments? Good meeting, lots of questions, lots of answers. Thank you, everyone, and we will adjourn. See you all next month. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
Thank you, everybody.
So glad she asked that. I was gonna ask you that after the meeting.
All right, I'm gonna end recording, Caleb.
Go ahead and stop the recording and then we can post that.